welcome to my cellar one more time. Several interesting things to discuss this evening. A reminder that if you don't leave comments, then I have very little to talk about. And it doesn't have to be a comment on something already, a topic that we've already hashed over. It can be something out of the blue, more or less, But anyway, just a thought. For what it's worth, there's a fantastic chase chart in the old TSR Indiana Jones RPG. You can check that out and adapt it. Great. That must mean that something in that game was worthwhile. I'm glad to hear that. I hated to think that they put out a dog that had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Thanks for the video, Tim. You're looking great. Well, thank you. I haven't commented in a few weeks, but the new school term is about to start, and our school D&D club will get back to full force. I was able to do an optional summer school activity for about 30 rising freshmen, and expect a good response at our club day this fall when we recruit students in a job fair-like atmosphere. Yeah, we did those at college. That's how the Southern Illinois Strategic Game Society went from 6 guys to about 20 in a very short period of time. Great. To the point, I expect I'll be trying to develop ways for several groups to run, and I wonder what gems of wisdom you might be able to share on the best ways to run and organize large groups of players. They don't necessarily need to be playing in the same adventure, but I like the idea of them being in the same world. Thanks again and have a great week. Well, I'll make a suggestion here. But it's dependent upon numbers I'm not familiar with. It depends on how many people you're going to have. It depends on how big a party you like to run. Some people like to run 5, some people like to run 8. I've run as many as 17. But that was a rare occasion, and I wouldn't want to do that again. And yet I've seen Matt Finch, and I've seen from Frog God run groups with like 30 people in them, and it's a different environment. Bill Webb is the other one who does that, and they do it differently, and everybody sits around, and it's a different method. You sound like, however, you're doing the original method of groups partying and not parties seeking adventure or fulfilling tasks or whatever. So my first thing would be, if you can get, say, and again, I don't know your comfort level, and it'll depend on how many assistant DMs you have, but if you can get 3 or 4 divisions, and they don't have to be permanent, but okay, you guys are a group, try to balance them out by their preferred character types and all that, and then run them all through the same rather simple adventure. Separately, of course, but run them all through there and let them know that that's what they're doing after they've run a session or two, and watch them tighten up as they start to compete with the other groups. They're still trying to do the best they can for themselves, but now they have the spur of doing better than the other groups. And in the spirit of things, discourage them from talking to each other, sharing information, through the ether on, World 1, World 2, World 3, World 4, however many versions of the same world. You could do that. You could do what we spoke about last week was persistent time. You'll have to watch that if you have multiple groups playing on the same world and they're doing different adventures. Whoever runs them will have to keep meticulous records on how many days or how many hours, so that you can keep them all on the big master clock to some extent. Otherwise, there'll be no switching back and forth from between groups, no sharing of information, because they're all in different places and different times in the different worlds. Or same world, different iterations of the world, their adventures, in other words. I don't know if you want to try doing big groups. I've done as many as, at a cons, I've done 12 or 14. And there's a different way you do that. For one thing, I chose an adventure that was very broad. They were tracking down thieves that had stolen something that they'd been hired to protect and had failed. And so they had a city and a big caravanserai that they had to go through and look for. And so the way you physically run that, at least I do, is you look down around the big U shape of the table. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And a couple of them may go to do something together, but what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And they all tell you what they're going to go do. And by the time you get over here, you know what you're going to, you've got a good idea of what to tell them to do. They found something, they didn't find something, roll the dice, see if you found something, whatever. And around you go. But this depends on the structure of the adventure. In this case, they were trying to find thieves. And they were trying to track them down all over this city that the thieves had escaped into. Different format, different milieu. Beyond that, it's also going to depend on where you start them all off. And is everybody going to start as, say, a third level? Especially your experienced players they're probably not ready to go back and enjoy doing it all over again. So maybe you start everybody at third level, newbies and oldies alike. The oldies will feel, all right, we got something out of it, and they'll resent the newbies for getting something they hadn't earned. Probably not. Beyond that, a little competitiveness amongst the player groups is pretty cool. If you have them in different adventures, doing different things, this group's, doing a quest for something over here, and this one's exploring something else, then you can have a more agitated, in a good way, group of players when they start comparing notes at lunch. What'd you guys do? Oh, man, you wouldn't believe it. We ran into a hippogriff and yada. Just some random thoughts on how to do it. Give me a private message sometime if you want some more back and forth on how to do this, because I'm very supportive of your overall goals. All right. Thanks for answering my questions. Yeah, okay, well, I don't go back and see whose, because I make a point of I only cut and paste the copy and never who sent it. Though sometimes I remember. Anyway, sorry to hear you got doxxed. Hope you managed to get things straightened out. Well, yes, more or less, so far. Next, your eloquence is truly enviable. Well said. I wish I could use the word horseshit with your eloquence. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite. It's not really obscene. It's just coarse. It's not blasphemous. It's just coarse. And so, for that reason alone, I like it. Okay. Hasbro WotC announced a September launch of the 3 more rule books and the Essentials kit in French, Italian, German, and Spanish, along with extensive follow-up for these products with dedicated staff using presses outside of U.S., China, working with marketing teams in the respective markets, and providing translated reviews, etc. I imagine the translation was an aspiration of TSR's back in the day. Did you and Gary discuss this in your Blue Sky sessions at all? Is it nice for you to see the game getting translated after all this time? Well, this certainly aren't the first translations. TSR did versions as well. Long after I left, but it should be pointed out that they did some translations. I myself have had it's just before the pandemic. I started a project with some people in Brazil to translate one of my adventures into Portuguese, and gonna have to tug on them again and see what's going on there. Of course, I got a Kickstarter that funded 200% with World of Games design, and it was supposed to come out in Gen Con. I don't think it did either. It's only 2 years late, so I don't know what the hell's going on there either. Anyway, back to this. Well, what you've described is good marketing for any company that wants to break into any market, new market, with a unique product. All right? Italian translation, Italian support products, etc. The whole line gets introduced. First the game, following with the support stuff, which I'm sure they're wise enough. They must have some people that are smart enough to realize that they need to have follow-up support material in the can, ready to go as soon as they have a market for it. I remember one time we were sitting there and we'd had I think we might have been on our second scotch, which was a rare occasion, and we were trying to find the strangest languages we can think of to translate D&D into someday. And we've gotten into ancient Incan, and we're going to do Mayan hieroglyphs and the regular languages, obscure Mongolian. It was just silly stuff we got to thinking about. But yeah, there was always the hope that, I know it sounds corny, but we really felt like we were kind of apostles of this new fun, and that we wanted to take it to other countries, to other languages, to more people. And that was a way to do it, obviously, was a new language. And of course, after sometime after I left, TSR did do that in some translations. So it's not like Hasbro just came up with this idea all by itself. Hasbro's smart enough to know how they decide to move out, expand the market on any one of their products. This is the way you do it. Great. Wonderful. Let Dungeons and Dragons be the distractions that triggers world peace. So then we can deal with climate warming. And I'm only being half facetious. The doxing thing, well, we'll talk about that again in a minute. It's cool. I'm just like cooler than hell with all this, because I can say that I was there at the very earliest part of the beginning. Not the earliest part of the beginning, but the latter part of the beginning, before the blooming. So, yeah, I love it. I think it's great. There are people in all those countries that are already playing. I have a friend from Italy that comes over to GaryCon every now and again, and he's been playing for years. So, it's not like it's brand new. Hasbro's wise enough to see that they might increase their market. Let's see. Whoever buys a Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum should donate some of the land for a proper Gygax memorial. Not going to happen, and it's not have anything to do with the ethics of whoever buys it. It is tiny. Okay? It is a small residential lot. Has it would have been probably a three bedroom house. Yeah, and then there was an add-on, maybe 4. I don't know how it was originally when it was purely a residence, because I didn't pay any attention to it when we got it. And, okay, one day we'll be here. And okay, yeah, fine. Whenever that happens. It's tiny. There's no land to give away unless you're talking about a 6 foot by 6 foot plot to put a fountain or something on the corner of the lot inside the sidewalk. It's tiny. There's no way they could do anything like what a lot of people want. It's always been curious. I've always been curious about, geez, I wonder what Gary would have wanted if we'd asked him. Would he be into this, memorial thing? Personally, I don't think so. Personally, I think it's the widow who will then be glorified by being the widow. Anyway, I figure if the opponent is super dangerous and superior, that would be reflecting in them causing more damage and removing more hit points to attack. No need to reduce the hit points in advance of the fight. I agree with you. Absolutely. You can give them enough minuses to their, trying to hit, or you can give them minuses to the reaction because of the shock of seeing, oh God, not that. There's plenty of things you can do in that regard. Okay. Now, referring back to something earlier, thanking me for the clarification about Wizard Tower games and D20 and that, and also the LinkedIn profile entry has been removed. Well, good, because that was full of falsehoods. And Wizard Tower Games made a video declaring exactly what association the two of them had at any given time. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to Wizard Tower Games and see Don's latest video. I got a comment on Like the Hat. Okay, Scientific Barbarian, Mud Puppy Games. There'll probably be a link in the content. There'll be another one for something else too. I can't have a fighter with a propensity to throw a spell. D&D now has 48 classes or so, and about 3 aren't spellcasters. I know, and that's why the current D&D is horse shit. 48 character classes. What a bunch of horse shit. You write a good enough backstory, and all of a sudden you got a new character class. It's ridiculous. The participation trophy generation. Yes. I showed up. Give me a trophy. Wants to be a fighter / magic user with healing. Yeah, they want to be everything. Why not? I had never had to fight for anything. I always got handed a trophy for showing up. Okay. Now, Gandalf versus the Balrog. Not so sure Gandalf is much of a wizard. He only has a light spell after all. there was such a there was such a tussle between Lake Geneva and the Tolkien fans. Had Gary had his way, dwarves would have been completely different, as would have elves. And later on, I'm going to talk about what they would have been. But bowing to common sense, if people want to buy our books and they want to think elves are what Tolkien wrote, and they all look like, what's his name, sliding down the staircase on his shield, okay, buy our books. Now, Gandalf and the Balrog. In a very early Dragon magazine, I published an article about Gandalf. Because, for one thing, Silmarillion and some of that stuff about the background of some of the mythical characters of Middle-earth hadn't even been published yet. All right, we'll get that stated right away. So Valar and you know, and all that stuff was unknown. None of that had been published. The argument was made that nothing that Gandalf had done during any of the books, and remember, this is way before the movies, for none of what he had done could you make a case that he was any greater than a 5th level wizard. And it was a valid argument, and people lost their shit about it, and it created an interesting argument. But the point was that nothing he had done in the book showed him to be anything more than. Therefore, if you're so impressed by what he did in the book, you know, why aren't you impressed with being a 5th level yourself? That was a big part of why that article got published. That's why, a big part of why I chose to publish it. We were already seeing level creep and poo-pooing. Well, here's an article that says, hey, everybody's favorite magic user, you can't prove he's anything more than a 5th level by anything he did. Now, there was some argument about a level possibility of a fireball or something, I don't know. But the article at the time made the point. And it made the point that not everything somebody else wrote about would fit necessarily into D&D the way you think it would. And that really, when you stop and think about it, when you play characters from level 1 up, 5th level is pretty hot stuff. Because the character you're playing has never been any higher than the level he is right now. So it's all new. Okay. All right. It says here, okay. Oh, and furthering another comment, wizards weren't completely stupid. They've been completely stupid since 2016. Okay. If you are playing the later editions and having fun, that's really all that matters. You're having fun. Sorry you had to deal with the new TSR thing. On a positive note, I can't help but notice that book off to your left. I heard it's a pretty good book. Okay. I was going to talk about this last week, but I got so wound up over the fly on the wall thing about in the bankruptcy hearing that I kind of glossed. So hang on. Okay. all of us DMs, in our heart of hearts, want to get past, pardon me, I know I'm wiggling around tonight. I'm trying to find a different thing behind my back that makes me not look like I'm slumped. My chair leans back. If it stayed front, then I'd look like this and stare you down, and it would be creepy. But, where was I? Yes. As DMs, we love to take our group by surprise. We love to. As DMs, there's nothing more irritating than you describe something they see in the room they just entered, and some wise guy from the back pops up. Oh, it's a Bandersnatch, and it's got 8 hit dice, and it did that, and right away they know what it is. Which is why I like to invent stuff. Now, as I was talking earlier, Tolkien's version of dwarves and elves is Tolkien's version. Originally, if you were looking at the older myths, at the older stories, they were both Fae, F-E-Y, F-A-E, okay, of the realm of fairy. They were not Gimli stonking around and all that armor and that great big helmet swinging that enormous axe. And they weren't Legolas doing his skateboard trick down the staircase, shooting people. They were Fae. Now, as a DM, I like to find a new realm, a new milieu, a new genre. And I've found a way to do that for DMs that are looking for something new, something different, something unknown for most of the characters, unless the players can't use their knowledge and bestow it upon their characters. But anyway, I digress. This is the book. I gotta get it so you can read it without the glare. Oh, crap. Hang on. There. It's called Twilight Fables. And the copy that I happen to have is OSE compatible. And it's also available in a 5e version. So everybody can use it. And Truth in Advertising, whatever. Yes, it was sent to me for review, for my review. And it's amazing. I recommend this to any DM who wants to teleport, transport, walk through the funny arch in the forest, whatever, his players to another whole world entirely, where they're going to get to learn the hard way from the ground up, like we all did when we first started playing role-playing games with pretend swords. This is all about the land of the Fae, the fairies, the goblins. The goblins and orcs, and the goblins particularly, are not the way Tolkien portrayed them. And, you know, that's fine. That was Tolkien's version, his story, his book. But in here, there are page after page of the Fae and various mythical creatures associated with the Fae. And All of these, I have citations as to which national, which oh Jesus, I'm having trouble thinking of the word here. Which folklore it comes from. I'll think of the word here in a minute. But this is it tells you a little bit about them. There's lovely art. The title cover, the title art was done by Darlene, and there's stuff in here by I think there's classical artists, Dürer or some others that are also cited in here. I mean, the art by is an amazing list of artists and art. The book is beautiful, wonderful pictures, well written. The author knows his mythology. He's done research to reconcile. There are many mythical fairy type creatures in several different ethnic mythologies. Creatures that are very similar to each other that pop up in different mythologies and different cultures. And that is noted. Nothing's going to work exactly like the players think it is. You can go whole hog and put them in a fairy mound and screw around with the time. All of the myths of the fae, are contained in this book. And there's adventures in here written into the book to introduce your players to this realm. Now, I've always had an interest in a number of the fae, being probably that's part of my Irish and part of my Finnish side of me. But they've got the Tuatha De Danann and the Balor and Reynard and the fox, and I mean everything under the sun. I really recommend the game. Their link, it will be here on oh, pardon me, dry throat. Their link will be listed here. It's both available in both OSE and 5e. It's available in hardbound. It's available in PDF. It's available in softbound. There are various myths surrounding the Knights of the Round Table, and that they were fae in their origins that spawned the legends or whatever. Well, Gawain's in here. There's the Draugr. It gives you, well, for example, the boggart. Behavior, quirks, habitat. This book has a really interesting way of telling the players how much they do or don't know based on their intelligence, doing an intelligence check, which I know is a kind of a 5e-ish thing, but rolling against their intelligence. How well do they roll against their intelligence? There's 2, 3, perhaps 4 facts about these creatures that know something about them. There's a suggestion on how to incorporate them into your campaign. Really nice book. I highly recommend this, just to find stuff, even if you don't take them to the land of Fae, pull stuff out of here that they've never ever seen before and let them be smug. Great book. Great book. And now, a new project. there's going to be a video at the end of this, at the very, very end. So stay through the credits this week for the treat at the end. And that's all I'll say about it. I guess that's all I got to say. Send questions. Next con I'm going to, Gen Con's going on this weekend. I don't miss the mob at all. I miss seeing a lot of my friends in the industry, but I don't miss the mob. And, I just don't miss it. No. I'm on a mobility scooter at conventions now, and down too low for people to even notice that I'm there. So, nope, no thank you. I am going to Gamehole, and next GaryCon, a new revival of an old wonderful thing that the widow killed, but she can't kill again. And that's, we're going to do the Tower of Gygax all over again. The Tower of Gygax was so much fun. All of us that were recruited to do it the first year, we all designed a couple of rooms. Just horrible, tricksy, nasty rooms. And groups were, people lined up for 7 players. You're a group, there's your character sitting in front of you when you sit down. And as they died, next, went in and sat down, and people were churned through. I have a die here up on my desk that I killed 38 people in a little over an hour and 15 minutes in the inaugural run of the tower. It was great. People were lined up like the peanut gallery, cheering deaths and successes equally. So we're going to bring that back to GaryCon. I can't wait. That's all I got, I guess. So stay tuned till the very end. Do not go V. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when the rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.